Hi, thanks for joining us for our marriage talk. My name is Jackie Hatcher, and I'm the Director of Marriage and Family Ministries here at Chatts Creek Church. I recently had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Dr. Rick Marks about marriage and some of the challenges marriages may be facing in this season, and how to deal with those challenges. Dr. Marks is a licensed counselor with a PhD in counseling psychology and more than 30 years of experience counseling couples and families. I really hope you enjoy this talk. And be sure to stick around until the end, because I want to tell you about some opportunities here at Chatts that I believe can help strengthen your marriage and help you and your spouse unlock the full potential of who God has called you to be as a couple. Dr. Marks, thank you so much for being here today. This is exciting.
It's great to be here. It's good seeing you again.
Yes, and so today we're going to be talking about marriage and talking about the challenges couples are facing during this pandemic.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the things I want you to share with us are, what have you seen the struggle that couples have actually been going through since COVID-19?
Great question. Yeah, at the very beginning of all of this, happening back January, February, and then you see the shutdown of everything. March 17th, essentially, is when it kicked off. Because I remember that day, because I didn't get to go see Michael Bublé. Right? They canceled the concert.
Oh no!
And so there was talk as it was moving this way, and you begin to hear about possible shutdowns. There was a lot of talk at the national level around professionals that this is going to really help a lot of families. It's going to strengthen a lot of marriages, because now couples have more time together, and that connection, that more time together is going to make things better. There was another group of professionals that says, actually, that's not true. What it's going to do is going to take the already broken families and stress them further and snap what was already, in a sense, kind of break what was already broken anyways. It'd be like one last stressor to kind of crack it. Well, data's in, divorce requests are up, alcohol abuse is up, child abuse is up, domestic violence use is up, drug abuse is up. It didn't do what one group thought. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Since most families are already distressed or broken on some level, they don't communicate well, they don't know how to solve problems well, which is really the predictor for health, right? Couples who know how to solve and communicate well, do well, communication and problem solving, the inability to do that well is 90% predicts divorce, right? So you think about it, those broken families had a period of respite. They all go to work during the day.
Right, exactly.
Right? You're gone from each other about, 9, 10 hours a day. Then you come back and deal with each other, then you sleep for about 8. Well, now you're around each other 24/7. And it took that which was already broken, added more stress to it, and what we've actually seen is more of a snap. A few weeks ago, I was on Channel 4 talking about this, and they actually kind of gave some data through their research on it. And so I was in that camp that said it's not going to make things better, it's going to make things worse. So depression, that's already there, it's going to get worse. Anxiety is going to get worse.
Those underlying issues that...
Very much so. And it's going to create more and more brokenness, more and more loneliness. And so that's actually what it's really done overall. And so it's interesting that one of the essential services is mental health. You have a master's degree in counseling, you're working on a doctorate, in the field as well. So as a not just as a minister, if you will, but also as a mental health professional, you've seen the brokenness and what it's doing, at least in this area, but nationally it's not been good.
Right, especially, with couples, because what I hear you saying is the pandemic didn't create the issue.
No, it actually didn't, because the issues were already there before. What it was almost like, you got rough waters, they're already rough, and then a hurricane comes along and took the rough waters and just made them more rough. But it was enough to snap some things, all right? And so there's a lot of us out there trying to, pull things together, but really, Jackie, as you know, being in the field for so long, most people don't know what to do different. They don't know how to solve problems. They don't know how to communicate. And we assume people do. You can't make that assumption. And because most people don't know how to make something better, they only do what they know to do, but they don't know what they don't know. And so, you know, traditional counseling doesn't teach people what they don't know. It gives them insight into why they do what they do. But at the end of the day, if I don't know what to do different, I can't create a difference. Exactly. You know, and so a lot of people are like, well, why am I this way? And I always ask, well, if you want to know why you're an alcoholic, let me ask you a question. What good would that do? And they'll think about it. They go, well, I guess it won't do any good. I go, you're right. Well, it will. When you're in the bar drinking, you can tell everybody why you're drunk. But in the end, you got to know what to do different. You've got to know how to solve the problem rather than understand the problem. And so that, because couples don't know what to do different, they're not able to create the difference.
They're not able to create a system in their world where they can communicate. Doesn't that have something to do with maturity?
It does. You know, in our world, and particularly for me, you know, what I'm probably most remembered for around the country is the idea of the conference around us. Us wins, you both win. Right. Us loses, you both lose. Marriage is not about me or my wife, it's about us. Right. Most marriages in the country today, people live for themselves at the expense of their usness. Right? Because I don't value us, I just value me. And if you want to live for yourself, for you, feel free, but mature people live for us, because mature people operate out of four core principles, which is the element of what we do in our world. Right. They live out of goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. And mature people always have goodwill. They're always respectful. They operate in humility, and we know God gives grace to the humble. And they're caring, empathy. Immature people don't know how to do that. And so I'm 58 years old. And you can be 58, but emotionally an infant, emotionally a child, emotionally an adolescent, or a mature adult.
So we're liking that emotional connection while we're home together in conflict.
Right.
So explain to me more about that emotional infant and emotional child. Tell us more.
We refer to those as the emotional stages of development.
Okay.
So the best way to understand them is kind of get a little parallel to the chronological stage. So emotional infants, chronological infants are the center of the world, right? Everything exists for its survival. And if the world doesn't take care of the needs of that infant, it's going to die. Adults who are emotional infants really operate the same way. They are the center of the world and everything exists for its needs. Thus, these adults tend to be tyrants, and they operate really this way, Jackie. I want what I want when I want it, and Jackie, you're nothing more than an object to give me what I want. These adults can be very abusive, and they have very little to no compassion and empathy. If you stay in a relationship with an emotional infant, they will strip you of your value and worth, and you'll let them. They are takers in the extreme. So these people don't understand love, and though you may be saved, that's about it.
Right.
Now, it is possible to be a chronological adult, but emotionally a child. Now, confession time, folks, all right? When I got married, I was emotionally a child. My father was an emotional teenager throughout his life. He died 36 years ago. And because my father and my stepbrother were not mature adults, they couldn't raise their kids to be mature adults. So when I left home and joined the Navy and got married, I was emotionally a child. Children, chronologically, they're not the center of the world, but they're still dependent and needy, and you've got things that I want, right? You got something that I want. So what do children do when they want something? They whine, they sulk, they threaten. I don't love you anymore. Yes. You're not my friend, Jackie, right? You just parent that kind of thing. They may even hit you, right? You look at what's happening in culture right now in terms of how we're dealing with conflict. We're dealing with conflict by what? Violence, aggression.
That's right.
Mature adults don't solve problems. Go look at even Christian adults. Look at the way they're using language on the internet to express themselves. That's not maturity. That's immaturity. So an emotional child, it operates this way. You have something that I want, so I gotta lie, trick you, whine, sulk, threaten you, punish you to give me what I want.
Right.
Why? Because I'm dependent and needy, and I want you to give me what I want. The problem with emotional children is they don't have an adult capacity to negotiate yet.
That's right.
All right? Now, an adult who's an emotional teenager, adolescent, they operate this way. If you give feedback correct, give advice, whatever, to an emotional adolescent, their brain hears it as if you're treating them as a child. Because what these folks are looking for, they don't want to be treated as children. They want to think they're adults.
That's right.
Got it?
Yes.
But they're really not. So if you correct them, they hear it as an attack against their independence and autonomy. And that's why you get things like, don't tell me what to do. And what do these do? What do these folks do? Sadly, it's mostly men. They go lock themselves in the room, play video games. Men are allowing video games to destroy their marriages today.
Yeah.
And you can think, why? Because they're not mature adults yet. They're immature adults, right? They go lock themselves in their man cave, whatever it is they do. And so, sadly, there's some books written on it. One by Diana West. Her book is called The Death of the Grown-Up. Phenomenal book. And the other is a book by Ben Sass called The Vanishing American Adult, which is how America is mostly an adolescent nation, and how it's destroying our country.
Absolutely.
What we have mostly today are emotional children raising children. This is why you see adults who are not mature, not dealing with conflict well.
Right.
They don't know how to deal with conflict in a mature way. So what is a mature adult? Mature adults operate from two principles. Because in essence, mature adults are actually humble people. And humility is a powerful way to live life. And God gives grace to the humble. In conflict, research shows mature adults move to compassion and they move to cooperation. The other three get defensive. These folks, mature adults, move to compassion. Why? Because they're humble. They're already secure in who they are. And they have the skills and abilities to listen. So where an immature adult might go, that's not true. What do you think that for? I'm not talking to you. A mature adult would say, so Jackie, let me make sure I get this straight then. So when I did this and this, that said to you that I was being disrespectful? And you might say, yes, Rick. And I go, oh, would you forgive me then? Because I would never want to come across as being disrespectful to you. Am I admitting that I was being disrespectful? No. What I am asking forgiveness for is because you then perceived what I did as disrespect. Why would I want you to see me that way? I don't want you to see me that way. So I can move to humility and go, forgive me for coming across as disrespectful. I don't want to do that. Why? Because I value the relationship. Immature adults don't value relationship in conflict. Mature adults recognize what's most important here is us, the relationship. And marriage requires two mature adults.
I was going to
create a mature marriage.
So it requires two mature adults to create a healthy,
loving marriage.
Loving marriage.
Yes.
What happens, I believe there's a question out there asking, what happens if you have an emotional infant and an emotional adult in that relationship? What do you usually see?
Usually you'll see an adult who won't confront, who won't speak back. The healthy adult won't confront. You think, why? Are they wimpy? No. Because Scripture says a fool appears wise when he keeps his mouth shut. And you don't engage a fool in their folly. Wise people, mature people understand some conversations aren't worth getting into. Why? You're acting a fool, and I'm not going to, because when you engage a fool in their folly, you lower yourself to the level of the fool. I'm not going to do that. I'll value the relationship enough, and myself, I'm not going to go down that road. When I was transforming my life many, many years ago, over 25, I used to pick fights a little well, because I wanted her to engage me, and she wouldn't. I used to think she was like, oh, you don't know how to talk. You don't know how to. What I found out was later when I grew up, she was wiser than me. She knew not to engage me. She knew not to engage me. Why? I was a fool.
I've often heard people say the person, a mature adult, is being passive by not
They're
responding.
actually being wise.
Right.
They're not passive. They're wise. Passive is not really healthy in conflict. Being wise is powerful. You know, Lori Gordon, one of my great mentors and teachers of my life, who's had a major influence in me. One day, many years ago, I was complaining about Luella. And Lori was listening, and she said to me, would you like to know why Luella is the way she is with you? And I, PhD, 2 masters, LPC, right? Ordained minister. I said, I don't know why. She said, why? And I said, because she grew up in an alcoholic home and from a broken family. And Lori looked and she said, are you open to another possibility? Yes, ma'am. She's my teacher and mentor, who I respect highly. Almost word for word, Jackie, here's what she said to me. Have you considered the possibility, Rick, that Luella is the way she is with you because of how you are as a way of being. You taught her to be that way. You trained her to respond that way. What would you expect her to do? Look at how you are. Novel idea that we actually create in others what they are by how we are as a way of being. Dr. Phil says it a little bit simpler in his TV show. He actually tells us on the television show, we teach people how to be around us.
Wow.
And he's absolutely right. And of course, now I'm in humility. And I looked at Lori and I said, then how do I untrain her? And she said, that's simple. Change who you are as a way of being. And I realized that I need to grow up. I need to become a healthy, mature adult so that, one, I can create healthy, mature adult children.
Yeah.
And I can create a healthy, mature, loving marriage. And starting in 1994, way back then, I started changing me.
Yes.
You know,
absolutely.
and I just want to become a very different man. So what is a mature adult? Mature adults in conflict move to compassion and cooperation.
What does that look like?
All right, example, many years ago, Lou, I was calling, complaining about me not making the bed. I hate making beds. For those listening, I was in the military 12 years. I know how to make a bed. I just don't think you need to make a bed if you're going to mess it up that night, right? Whatever. But 25 years ago, she's calling complaining. I wasn't listening to the complaining. I was listening for the unmet need underneath that, which was really a need for support.
Okay.
And I moved to compassion. I said, well, stop a minute. She goes, well, I go, stop a minute. I said, if I made the bed, would you feel supported? You actually heard the shift in her voice emotionally. It went to this. Yes, Rick. You can call her and ask her. All these years later, 95% of the time, did it this morning, when I am home, I make the bed. Not because I like making beds, because I don't. But when I make the bed, the woman that I love feels supported. And when she feels supported, that's good for us. It was compassion that moved me there. Defensiveness would only focus on the act of making the bed, not the meaning behind it.
Absolutely.
And we have to go to what is the meaning behind it.
Yes.
You see. But compassion will move you there. But you got to move to humility to get there.
But it requires us to be emotional, mature adults.
Yes, it does.
Yes. And so during this pandemic, this season that couples are locked in together and they're responsible to each other to be healthy, to connect emotionally. In order to come out of conflict, your bottom line was to do what?
Well, ultimately, I had to learn to communicate well. I had to listen well, and I had to care. I go back to my 4 words: goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. Those are the 4 things that kept showing up in my life for me as a way to transform my life, right? So I began to realize, I asked myself, what I'm doing right now, is it goodwill? If it wasn't, I stopped myself from doing it. Was I being respectful? If I wasn't being respectful, I'd stop myself. And I'd go, I think I'm coming across disrespectful, Jackie. Would you forgive me? Right? If I was in goodwill and I knew I was respectful, I knew I was being humble, which then produces empathy. I could care.
I hear something else too. You have to be aware. Apparently, we have to be aware of where we are on that spectrum.
Yes, when you look at the whole field of emotional health and emotional competencies, the very fundamental skill you have to develop is self-awareness. You cannot have self-control if you're not self-aware. People who are not self-aware can't stop themselves from doing what they're doing because they're not aware they're doing it, right? Now, I was in a meeting today with someone who asked me about somebody, and they said, I don't think this person's aware they're doing it. What do you think? I said, I think they are aware on some level. And what I showed him with one of our statements, I said, I think on some level he is aware. He goes, you know, I think you're right. The issue isn't whether he's self-aware or not. He is self-aware about that. But I have a phrase in my world, in what I do. Why is it when people know they do something and don't change it? Here's why. They don't care enough yet to change it.
That word.
And the phrase is care enough. They may care they're that way, but they don't care enough yet. But when you care enough, you will do something different. How bad does a pain have to get for you to want to fix something? Does someone have to walk out of your life? Do your kids have to shut you out completely? What does it going to take for you to care enough to move to brokenness, become teachable and humble, so that God can teach you about you? Self-awareness is fundamental. You got to be emotionally self-aware. Thus, you got to have emotional vocabulary. So I can say, well, I think I'm feeling frustrated. I think I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, you know? And then I can regulate myself.
Yes.
And of course, you know, the world that we're in, we actually teach people how to develop self-awareness and then how to self-regulate the lower order brain, right, which is where sin comes from. How to regulate that part of your brain so you can be slow to anger, quick to hear, and slow to speak. So you can speak the truth in love, because love has a tone to it.
Tell me what that looks like. What does that look like?
What does it look like?
Yeah.
The difference would be something like, you know, why are you always that way? That's a question, but it's very much not in love. It listens to the tone.
Yes.
As opposed to, can you help me understand how you became that way? One's inquisitive and it's respectful. The other is a very unloving tone. Your brain's going to react to the unloving tone.
Right.
But love, since love has a tone to it, whenever I speak the truth in love, people don't get triggered by me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the emotional infants, let's talk about domestic violence.
All right.
Concerning that emotional infant.
Since it's up.
Yes.
The emotional, all right, so you could be an emotional infant and not be domestic violence. I would tell those who are listening, if they want to understand domestic violence rather quickly, do a Google search, Google Images or Bing Images, just type in power and control wheel.
Yes.
Power and control wheel, and you'll see a graphic that defines all that domestic violence is, all right? It's more than just physical violence and hitting, that kind of stuff. Ultimately, it's about power and control. That's a character disorder. That's a character disorder. And so people who move to domestic violence, the really bad ones, they're more of a character problem. You could say they're an infant, but there are some emotional infants who don't hit.
Right.
All right? They're tyrants, but they don't necessarily hit.
Right.
That kind of thing. And they are controlling because they're infants. So you have to kind of distinction between the two. But again, if you hit someone, you hit someone, whether you're an infant or domestic violence, you go to jail in my mind. So domestic violence is not about anger management. It's a piece of it, but it's about, I'm going to control you and I'm going to have power over you.
Right.
It is, in my mind, the highest form of disrespect of another individual. We always have to respect the dignity of others, no matter who they are. You know, this whole thing going on today in culture, and we're talking about this and that, this different. Ultimately, we're all created by God, so every human alive has dignity. Every human has dignity. Why devalue another person's dignity? Domestic violence doesn't seek dignity in anybody. All the dignities are theirs. It's all about them.
So you have this couple, and one of the spouses experiencing this violence or disrespect.
It could be violent.
Right, and it could be violent.
But it could also be financial control the children.
Absolutely.
They may lock you in your room by standing in the doorway, won't let you out. All of those actually can put you in jail. Literally, they can put you in jail doing those kinds of things.
That has increased the divorce rate.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. Because, well, during COVID, domestic violence is up. They're putting people together who aren't healthy and mature, who don't know how to, they're impulsive, they don't know how to regulate, and thus things are happening. So again, if we were really helping people grow to be healthy, mature adults, we would see a decrease in all that and an increase in the idea of usness, right? An increase in love and goodwill.
Love. That's where we need to go now. Love. What have we lost as believers in Christ concerning that concept? All that Christ is.
What have we lost? That's an interesting question. I think I'd answer it this way. The word love is grossly misused in culture. Example, I love my wife, I love my children, I love the U.S. military, and I love mint chocolate chip ice cream. I love them all.
Yeah.
All right? But you hear the misuse of that word. What if I changed the word love to this word? What difference would it make in how I treated you? We'll go with John 3:16 first. For God so loved the world that he gave. Let's change the word love to this word. For God so valued the world that he gave. You see, I value my wife and I value my children. I do not value the U.S. military ever near as much. And to be honest, I don't value mint chocolate chip ice cream at all. I just love it, right? Now think this through. If I treated my wife on a regular basis in a way that devalued her, could she then not logically argue that I don't love her? And the answer is yes. Why? Because love never devalues the object of love.
Amen.
And if you devalue someone on a regular basis and they walk out of your life and like, what are you complaining about? You've taught them you don't value them. Why would you want them to stick around? Because your behavior says, I don't want you in my life. You're only creating for yourself the very thing you've been sowing all along. Because you will reap what you sow. What I like to tell couples, the reason you're reaping all this in your life is because you've been sowing it all along. What do you expect to happen? You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so if we learn how to deal with love in a healthy, mature way, then I believe that we can create healthy, loving, stable, mature homes.
Okay.
That can create, even during this pandemic and beyond,
yes,
a testimony of Christ's love to the children first and then to the world out there. Our kids are watching us.
yes.
And just because you go to church 3 times a week, your kids know whether you believe your faith or not. How do you know? By how you treat each other as parents, as a husband and wife. And if you say you love Jesus and you're disrespectful to your wife or your husband, you put them down, you're neglectful, and then you're loving out here at home. Look, I was on staff at a mega church many years ago. I always told my kids, if the way you see me treat people in public is not the same way I treat you and your mama on a regular basis, don't trust my faith. I'm a liar and a hypocrite. You know I don't believe the faith either. The real me is the guy at home, not the one in public.
Very well said.
I always held myself accountable to my kids.
Yes.
You know,
That's
handle it well.
way to go.
Yeah.
Man, this has been such an awesome conversation.
Well, thank you.
And thank you.
I hope
for
it's been
answering.
beneficial.
Definitely beneficial to me. We hope it's beneficial to all those watching out there.
Well, amen. Amen.
I do appreciate you, Dr. Marks.
Well, you're a dear friend to me, and so is your hubby, so I'm excited for both of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. We have 2 opportunities coming up here at Chet's Creek that I wanted to let you know about that can help you strengthen your marriage. Merge is a class designed to give engaged and seriously dating couples a unique opportunity to learn, seek wisdom, and receive counsel about marriage in a safe, fun, challenging, and authentic environment. Merge prepares couples for marriage by addressing common challenges in marriage from a biblical perspective. This class is on Monday evenings online and will kick off September the 14th. Re-Engage is another marriage class that we offer here at Chet's and is designed for married couples whose marriages aren't perfect, which is all of us. Whether your marriage just needs to be reignited a little or is in need of a complete resurrection, Re-Engage is a safe place for couples to reconnect. Even if your marriage is strong, but you're looking for an opportunity to grow together, Re-Engage is for you. The classes also be offered online Monday evenings and will kick off September the 21st. To learn more about either of these opportunities or to sign up for one, visit chetscreek.com/marriage.